My name is Jenna. I'm 35 years old. 3 days after I buried my mother, the woman I bathed, fed, and held through 4 years of terminal illness, my two sisters stood in the center of our family living room and told me I had 24 hours to pack my bags and get out. I want you to picture that room for a second, because the details matter. The living room of the house where I grew up in Dayton, Ohio. The same carpet we used to sit on Christmas morning. The same window where Mom used to hang her hummingbird feeder every April. I had just gotten back from the cemetery. I was still wearing the black dress I'd bought on clearance from Target because I hadn't had the money, or honestly the mental space, to go shopping for something nicer. My hair was in a bun I hadn't brushed in 3 days. I had dark circles so deep they'd stopped being dark circles and started being just my face. And across from me stood Alexis, my older sister, 39 years old. She was wearing a cream-colored blazer I later found out cost $400. Her nails were done. Her hair was blown out. She had driven up from her house in Sarasota, Florida, a house with a pool and an HOA and one of those signs by the door that says, "Live, laugh, love," without any irony whatsoever. Next to her was Brianna, 37. She'd flown in from Seattle 2 days ago, the first time she'd been to this house in over a year. She was wearing a merino wool sweater and carrying a Starbucks cup she must have grabbed on the drive from the hotel because she hadn't stayed here. She'd booked herself a Hampton Inn for her mother's funeral week. I'll let that sit with you. They looked rested, put together, like they'd been preparing for this moment. Alexis was the one who spoke first. She crossed her arms, looked around the room like she was already mentally listing it on Zillow, and said, "Jenna, you've had a good run here, but the house goes to all three of us equally. We've already talked to a realtor. We want to sell, and we need you out within 24 hours so we can start the process." I remember blinking, just standing there blinking, and then Brianna, sweet, passive Brianna, who had let Alexis do the talking at every hard moment of our entire lives, slid a piece of paper across the coffee table toward me. It was a will, Mom's will, dated 11 years ago, when Mom was healthy and the world made sense, and none of us could have imagined what the next decade would look like. "It's all right there," Brianna said, without looking me in the eye. "Equal split, the house, the estate, everything 3 ways. And then Alexis, and I need you to really hear this. Alexis tilted her head at me with this small, almost sympathetic smile and said, "Look, we appreciate everything you did, but you have to understand, Jenna, you were living here rent-free. You were a glorified maid, a really devoted one, sure, but that's what you chose, a glorified maid." I had not slept more than 4 consecutive hours in over 2 years. I had watched my mother forget my name. I had cleaned wounds and counted pills and driven to the ER at 2 a.m. in February in a snowstorm in a 2014 Honda Civic with a broken heater. I had paid the property taxes on this house out of my own checking account. I had put my entire life, my career trajectory, my relationships, any version of a future I had been building, on hold because our mother needed someone, and these 2 women, with their blazers and their wool sweaters and their Starbucks, had decided that someone was not going to be them, a glorified maid. I looked at that will on the table. I looked at my sisters. And then I thought about what was under my bed upstairs. A black expandable folder, 3 inches thick, held shut with a rubber band. I didn't say anything. Not yet, because they thought they were holding the winning card. They didn't know about the black folder. They didn't know that by Friday, I wouldn't be the one moving out. They would be the ones losing everything. Now, let me take you back 4 years to the day my sisters stopped being my family. It started on the Thursday afternoon in October. I was working my remote data entry job. I'd been doing medical records transcription for a healthcare billing company out of Columbus for about 6 years at that point. It wasn't glamorous. It was about $8,000 a year, steady, with benefits. I worked from a desk in my apartment in Dayton, about 20 minutes from my mom's house. I was renting a one-bedroom for $10 a month. I had a cat named Butterscotch. I had a small life, but it was mine, and I was, I think, genuinely content in it. Mom called me that Thursday around 3 p.m. She said she was tired. That was it. Just, "Jen, I'm so tired lately." I knew my mom. I knew the difference between her tired from gardening voice and her tired from something else voice. So I drove over after work, made her dinner. She'd been losing weight. I'd noticed it for months. And said, "Mom, we're going to the doctor." 2 weeks later, stage 3 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. I will never forget sitting in that oncologist's office in the orange plastic chair, holding my mother's hand, listening to words that rearranged the entire architecture of the future I had planned. I was 31 years old. I called Alexis from the parking lot. She cried. She said, oh my God, whatever you need." I called Brianna. She cried too. She said, "I'm going to look into flights. I'll figure something out." What Alexis did, she made an Instagram post within 48 hours. A throwback photo of her and Mom on a beach from 2009. Big sun hats and matching smiles. The caption said, "My whole heart. We're fighters. Sending all my love to my mama from down here in Florida. If you know us, send prayers." It got 847 likes. People she hadn't spoken to in years commented, "So strong, thinking of your family." Alexis hearted every single one. What Brianna did, she called twice more that week, both times from what sounded like a restaurant or a bar. She said she was looking into FMLA options at her tech company. That conversation, and about a dozen like it over the next 6 months, was the last serious discussion we ever had about either of them coming to help. And me? I went home to my apartment, looked at Butterscotch, and started doing math on a legal pad. How long could I work remotely from Mom's house? What were her current bills? What did the mortgage situation look like? Was she on Medicare yet? She was 68. She had Medicare Part A and Part B, but her drug coverage had gaps, what people in the medical billing world call the donut hole, and her supplemental insurance had lapsed 2 years prior because she'd missed a payment during a period when her memory was already starting to soften at the edges, in ways we didn't yet have a name for. I made a list of everything I needed to figure out. The list was 2 pages long. I drove back over to Mom's house that Friday with a duffel bag and my laptop. I never really left. Let me tell you about a Tuesday night in February of the second year. It was 11:30 p.m. I had been awake since 5 in the morning because Mom had had a rough night the night before. She'd been disoriented, kept calling me by my Aunt Carol's name, kept trying to get out of bed even though she was too weak to stand safely. We'd had a bed rail installed and a baby monitor on her nightstand that fed to my phone. I slept with the volume on full. I had not had a full night of sleep in 6 weeks. That Tuesday, I'd worked my 8 hours of data entry, made Mom's 10 a.m. medications. She was on 7 different prescriptions at this point, and the schedule was a laminated chart I'd made and taped to the inside of the kitchen cabinet. Made her lunch, helped her with her bath, which she needed help with because she'd fallen once in the shower, and the fear of it happening again was something we both carried quietly, like a stone in our pockets. She'd had a good afternoon, actually. We watched an old episode of Wheel of Fortune together, and she'd laughed at something. I can't even remember what. And for about 45 minutes, she was just my mom. Just Dorothy. Just the woman who used to make peanut butter cookies on snow days and could name every player on the 1984 Cleveland Browns roster for some reason. Then, at around 9 p.m., she said she didn't feel right. I took her temperature. 101.3. For a cancer patient on her medication regimen, that's not a number you wait out. I called the oncology nurse line. She said to monitor it and if it hit 101.5 to go to the ER. By 10:15, it was 101.7. I got Mom dressed, which took 20 minutes because she was weak and confused and kept asking where we were going, and I kept saying, "Just to see the doctor, Mom. It's okay. It's okay." And I got her into the Honda, and I drove to Miami Valley Hospital in the February dark, the heat in my car blowing lukewarm at best, and I held her hand at every red light. We were there until 4 a.m. It was a UTI. Urinary tract infections in elderly cancer patients can escalate terrifyingly fast and cause severe confusion, and that's exactly what was happening. They gave her IV antibiotics. They sent us home with a prescription and instructions. I sat in a plastic hospital chair next to her bed for 4.5 hours while she slept, and I scrolled through my phone and saw that Alexis had just posted a reel of herself at a rooftop bar in Tampa for a friend's birthday. I did not post anything. I drove home in the dark. I helped Mom into her bed. I set an alarm for 7 a.m. so I could give her the first dose of the new antibiotic with food. I did this, not this exact scenario, but something close to it, some version of this, approximately once every 2 to 3 weeks for 4 years. I'm not telling you this for sympathy. I'm telling you this because when Alexis called me a glorified maid, I needed you to know exactly what she was erasing. Now here's where I have to talk about money, because the money is the part that built the folder. My mother's house was a modest 3-bedroom in a quiet part of Dayton. She'd owned it since 1987. It was paid off. My dad, who passed when I was in high school, had had a life insurance policy that covered the mortgage, so there was no mortgage payment. But a paid-off house is not a free house. Property taxes, $900 a year. Mom had not been paying them. By the time I started going through her finances in that first month, she was 8 months behind. I paid them, out of my savings. Utilities, gas, electric, water, trash, roughly $40 a month average, higher in winter. HOA dues, $5 a month, and again, she was behind. I paid the arrears and took over the account. Medication copays. Even with Medicare, between the copays, the gap coverage supplements I eventually got her enrolled in, and the over-the-counter supplies, compression socks, wound care materials, the specific fiber supplement her GI doctor wanted her on, I was spending between $80 and $00 a month, depending on the cycle of treatment. Medical equipment, the shower chair, the bed rail, the walker, the wheelchair we needed in year 3, home modifications, a grab bar in the bathroom, a ramp off the back door because the step became a fall risk. Food, groceries for both of us, every meal I cooked, every sodium level I tracked. I kept every receipt, every single receipt. Not because I planned to use them, not because I had some legal strategy already forming in my mind. I kept them because I am, by nature and by training in medical billing, a person who documents things. I kept them in a folder, initially just a manila folder, then a bigger one, then the black expandable folder, organized by month, by category, color-coded tabs, running totals in a spreadsheet I updated every Sunday night. I called Alexis about the money twice. The first time was about 9 months in. I told her I was covering the property taxes and the utilities and the bulk of the medical expenses, and that it would mean a lot if she could chip in. Even a few $100s a month would help. She said, "Jenna, you're living there for free. Your housing is covered. That's literally the trade-off." I called Brianna 6 months after that. Same conversation. Different words. She said she had her own bills, student loans, that Seattle was expensive. She said, "You're doing such an amazing job, Jen. Mom is so lucky to have you." I stopped asking after that. I just kept paying, and I kept every receipt. By the end of 4 years, I had paid out of my own pocket, out of my $38,000 a year data entry salary, out of my savings, out of a small 401k I partially cashed out in year 3 and paid the penalty on, a total of just over $67,000 toward that house and my mother's care. $67,000. I don't want to spend too long on this because honestly, I've spent enough of my life's energy on their choices. But you need this context. Alexis visited twice in 4 years, 4 days each time. Stayed in a hotel both times. During her second visit, she cried in the kitchen and told me I was her hero and that she didn't know how I did it. She brought Mom flowers and an edible arrangement. She took a photo and posted it with the caption, "Time with my girls. Some things are more important than the chaos of everyday life. Cherish the ones you love." She flew home 2 days later. Brianna came once, for 4 days in year 2. She helped, I'll give her that. When she was physically there, she was gentle with Mom, and she cried privately, in the way of someone who genuinely felt it but couldn't hold it for long. After she left, her calls got shorter and further apart. By year 3, she was checking in maybe once every few weeks. I could feel her pulling away from the weight of it, the way people do when the grief is slow and ongoing and there's no clean ending in sight. I don't entirely blame her for that. Some people can't hold it. But she left, and I stayed. In year 4, as Mom moved into home hospice, 11 weeks that I managed alone, coordinating 3 rotating nurses and a social worker, Alexis posted a quote graphic on her Instagram story that said, "Grief is the price we pay for love." She posted it the day after the hospice nurse told us it could be any time now. She drove up for the last week. I'll give her that. Mom died on a Wednesday morning in April. I was holding her hand. I was the only one in the room. I arranged the funeral. I wrote the obituary. I ordered the flowers, coordinated with the pastor, made the photo display board that sat on an easel by the entrance. The reception was at the house. I made the food. I accepted the condolences. I thanked every single person who came through that door. Saturday night, after everyone left, Alexis and Brianna sat at the kitchen table with glasses of wine I didn't have. They talked about the house. I heard them from the hallway. Monday morning, 3 days after the burial, they called me into the living room, and you already know what happened next. I did not argue with them that Monday. I know that might surprise you. I know if I were watching this video, I'd be screaming "fight back" at my screen. But I had been carrying a secret for almost 2 years, and I had learned in 4 years of caregiving that there is a time for everything. There is a time to hold someone's hand and a time to hold your ground. And the key is knowing which moment you're in. That moment was not the moment for the dramatic speech. So I said, very calmly, "I hear you. Can you give me until Friday? I need a few days." Alexis looked suspicious. Brianna looked relieved that there wasn't a scene. "Friday," Alexis said. "And then we're listing." I went upstairs. I closed my door. I sat on the edge of my bed. I reached underneath it and I pulled out the black folder. About 22 months before Mom died, I had been talking to a woman in an online caregiver support group, one of those Facebook groups with about 40,000 members, people all over the country supporting aging or ill parents, most of them doing it alone, most of them women, most of them slowly going underwater. Her name was Patricia. She was in Georgia, and she had been through almost exactly what I was going through, right down to the siblings who contributed nothing. Patricia told me 2 things that changed my life. The first thing she told me was, "Honey, you need to talk to an elder law attorney." The second thing she told me was, "Look up caretaker's lien." I want to explain this as clearly as I can because I think a lot of people in my situation don't know this exists, and they deserve to know. A caretaker's lien, sometimes called a caregiving lien, or structured under a broader legal concept called a quanta meruit claim, meaning what one deserves in Latin, is a legal mechanism that allows someone who has provided substantial, documentable care and financial support to a property owner to file a claim against that property. The idea is, if you kept someone's house from being lost to back taxes, if you maintained it, if you paid for it, if you devoted your life to the person who owned it, you are entitled to compensation. Not charity, not a thank you, compensation as a matter of law. The requirements vary by state. They are not automatic. You have to document everything. You have to file. You have to move through a legal process. I had been documenting everything for 4 years. 2 weeks after that conversation with Patricia, I took a personal day from my data entry job and drove to meet with an elder law attorney whose office was in a slightly worn brick building near downtown Dayton. His name was Gerald. He was in his late 50s, wore reading glasses on a beaded chain, and had a way of listening that made you feel like he'd heard everything and nothing surprised him. I put my folder on his desk and I told him everything. He went through the receipts slowly, column by column, running total by running total. He didn't say much for a long time. Then he took his glasses off and said, "You've been living in that house and maintaining it and financing it and providing care?" "Yes," I said. "For how long?" "About 2 years so far. It'll be longer." "And your mother is the sole owner?" "Yes." "And there's a will?" "An old one. Equal split between me and my 2 sisters." He nodded. He put his glasses back on. He said, "If you continue to document this, every expense, every hour you can reasonably account for, every medical appointment, every utility bill, and if your mother passes without having updated the will, you may have substantial grounds for a claim against the estate before any distribution occurs, meaning before your sisters get anything." I stared at him. "The claim," he continued, "would need to be filed and adjudicated, but given what you've shown me, and given what you're describing, I think you have a very strong case. The property cannot be sold, or the proceeds cannot be distributed until your claim is resolved." I drove home and I did not tell anyone. Not a soul. I kept documenting. I kept every receipt. I updated the spreadsheet every Sunday night without fail. Gerald and I checked in every 4 months. On Wednesday, 2 days after my sisters told me to get out, I drove to Gerald's office with the complete folder, 4 years of documentation, and we formally filed the lien against the property. On Thursday, Gerald sent a letter to both Alexis and Brianna via certified mail and email, informing them that a caretaker's lien had been filed against the property in the amount of $67,483, representing documented financial contributions to the property and the care of its owner, and that any sale or distribution of the property was legally encumbered until the claim was resolved. Friday morning. The meeting Alexis had called to finalize next steps. She had already been in contact with a realtor. That realtor, a pleasant woman named Kim, who had no idea she was walking into a war zone, was present at the house when I came downstairs. I had the folder under my arm. Alexis opened her mouth to say something about the timeline. I set a copy of the lien filing and Gerald's summary letter on the coffee table. Same coffee table where she'd slid the old will at me 4 days ago. I said, "You should read that before you talk to Kim about anything." The room was very quiet. Alexis read it faster than I expected. Her face went still. Then she looked up at me and said, "What is this?" "It's a caretaker's lien," I said. "It means the house can't be sold and the estate can't be distributed until a court resolves my claim. My attorney has documented $67,483 in contributions I made to this property and to Mom's care over 4 years." You can't." "The filing number is at the top of the page. You're welcome to verify it." Kim, the realtor, had gone very still near the fireplace. She was holding her portfolio binder against her chest like a shield. Brianna had not said anything. She was staring at the paper. I watched her face go through several things at once. Confusion, then calculation, then something that looked, honestly, almost like recognition. Alexis's voice got sharp. "You've been planning this whole time." And I looked at my sister. My older sister, who had called me a glorified maid, who had flown in for 4 days twice in 4 years, who had posted Instagram content about our mother's illness from a rooftop bar in Tampa. And I said, "No, I've been taking care of our mother. The planning came later. The receipts came first." I heard Kim quietly excuse herself and step outside. The legal process that followed took about 4 months. There were mediations, There were attorneys on both sides. Alexis hired an aggressive family law attorney out of Columbus who tried several angles, argued that my living in the house constituted sufficient compensation, argued that some of my documented expenses were personal and shouldn't count, argued that the lien was an overreach. Gerald had seen all of it before. He was calm and methodical, and he had my spreadsheets. In the end, before the matter went to a full hearing, we reached a settlement. The exact number stays between me and my attorney, but I'll tell you this. I didn't leave that table with a third of anything. My claim was validated. My financial contributions to the property were recognized. When the house was eventually sold, I received a substantially larger portion of the proceeds than an equal three-way split would have provided. Alexis received less than she expected, significantly less. Brianna, to her credit, did not fight it as hard. At one point in the mediation, she said quietly, "I know what Jenna did. I know." Her attorney gave her a look. She didn't say anything else, but I heard her. The house sold in August. I was there for the walkthrough. I stood in the empty living room on that same carpet, and I looked at the hummingbird feeder hook outside the window, bare now, and I said goodbye to it all. It has been 14 months since the settlement was finalized. I do not speak to Alexis. That is not a dramatic statement. It is just the plain, quiet fact of my life now. She sent me one email about 6 months after everything concluded that was mostly about how I had blindested her and weaponized our mother's illness. I read it twice. I did not respond. I am not angry at Alexis anymore. I'm not. I think anger was something I used to keep myself going, the way you sometimes burn furniture to stay warm when you run out of firewood. I don't need that fuel anymore. I talk to Brianna occasionally, a text here and there. It is not what it was. We will never get back to what it was, because you cannot unring certain bells. But there is something there, a thread. She sent me a card on the anniversary of Mom's passing. I kept it. I am living in a small apartment in a city I won't name, because I value my privacy now in a way I never did before. I moved from medical billing transcription to a coordinator role at a nonprofit that works with family caregivers. The pay is still modest, but the work is meaningful in a way that feels like it was built for me. Like all those years of living in the details of someone else's medical life were quietly preparing me for something. I have friends, slowly. I am rebuilding the social life that got quietly swallowed during 4 years of caretaking. And that is its own kind of grief, by the way. The grief of the life you didn't get to live. The friendships that drifted. The relationship I let dissolve in year 2 because I couldn't be present for it. There are ghosts in that direction too, and I'm learning to walk past them without stopping. I have thought a lot about what the lesson of my story is, because people always want there to be a lesson, a moral to the thing, something clean and translatable that they can hold on to. Here is the most honest thing I can tell you. The revenge, the lien, the settlement, the moment in that living room when Alexis's face went still, it mattered. I won't pretend it didn't. There was a kind of justice in it that I needed in order to move forward. The money helped. I'm not going to perform some enlightened indifference to that. The money helped. But the more important thing, the thing I think about when I wake up at 3 a.m. and the old thoughts come, is this. I did not regret taking care of my mother. Not for one single day. It cost me enormously. It cost me money and years and opportunities and relationships and my own health in ways I am still discovering. The weight of those 4 years is not something that just disappears. I still have nights where I hear something and think I need to check the monitor. I still sometimes calculate the calories in a meal automatically, the way I used to track her protein intake. The cost of staying was real. And the lesson is not, don't stay. The lesson is not, protect yourself first. I'm so tired of that advice being handed to caregivers. This relentless cultural message that the noble thing is to prioritize yourself and let someone else handle it, as if there is always a someone else. There is often not a someone else. And there are people all over this country right now who are being the someone else, and they are burning through their savings and their health and their future, and no one is posting about them on Instagram. The lesson for me is document everything. Not because you're planning a legal battle, not because you expect betrayal, although sometimes it comes anyway. Document it because it is your story, and your story has value, and someone will try to tell you it doesn't. Document it because the truth has a way of becoming negotiable when there's money on the table, and receipts are not negotiable. Document it because the work that gets done quietly by people who are too tired to advocate for themselves is real work. It is the most important work, and it deserves to be seen. I kept every receipt. If you are in this right now, if you are the one who stayed, the one who showed up, the one managing the medications and the 3 a.m. phone calls and the forms and the financials, I want you to hear me. You are not invisible. You are not a maid. You are not obligated to disappear politely when it's over. Keep every receipt.